And the process really just repeats itself. You take one element at a time, you find the right photo, you modify that photo, bring it back in, and use it as a texture. But that's not the whole story. This is kind of a base coat, and now we need to make it into a painting. One thing I'm noticing here is that there would be little shadows kind of cast from each of these individual elements, and it would be on top of the texture. So here I have already made a group and I've isolated the area that I want to paint in. But a lot of manual painting is part of this process. So here I'm just going to paint in kind of relative to the details. You know, there's folded cloth underneath. And so it's not a flat surface that these shadows are being cast on. And I'm just going to paint in the shadows manually to really integrate the two, because we have tried to make the photos not jump out too much, but that's just been within each texture. What we haven't really done any of is integrating object to object. And that's where light becomes a really, really powerful tool, because we have spent time essentially removing light from each of the independent textures, because those photos were taken who knows where. And what we needed to do first was to make them homogeneous. We needed to make them a uniform setting. Well, now that we have them in place in our image, well, now we need to make it match our lighting. And so you're sort of adding light back in with manual brushstrokes. It might seem like a convoluted process, but this is the way you get total control. But what you're left with, once you've integrated it all together, is something that feels uniform. Yes, each of these photos came from different locations, but I've gone through this very painstaking process to make them all live naturally in my image. And this isn't probably fully finished. I notice I have some messy edges on these wires and stuff. Also, bonus points if you can name the reference here. This general collection of objects is not random. What I've chosen here are individual stickers that match, you know, the hacker aesthetic that I'm going for, or a collection of various different types of documents that are not random. Depending on the size and scale of objects in your scene, if it was totally tiny, viewed like this, you could put random stuff. Really, at that point, all you're seeing is kind of the impression of text or the impression of images. But if it's something big enough that it actually becomes a readable part of your image, what a waste to use some random photo. These are storytelling elements. So when I think about adding textures to a painting like this, I actually kind of think I'm a set decorator in a movie, where I'm going through magazines and looking for just the right piece of furniture, or I'm essentially shopping on the internet. Now, I'm not getting physical objects, I'm just getting photos, but when I put them all piece by piece together, they add richness to the image. They don't just add visual clutter, as I think textures so often do. They tell a story. So as you think about this process, know that there's a lot of technical stuff involved, and that's what I've spent time showing you. But none of it matters if you're not telling a story. That the photos are not determining your design. You have the design in your head, and hopefully you started with a thumbnail sketch like this one, and then you kind of had a mental image before any actual image started taking place. Then when you go looking for photos, you can find much more specific things. And sure, your audience is probably not going to point out all these really specific details, but I think that the image is better for having thought of them in the first place. That something about it just works. If you had been less thoughtful, the image might just not work as well. The audience might not know why, but it wouldn't feel quite right. So I think this process is equal parts technical and narrative. I can't teach you how to tell a good narrative. That's on you. I know you're a creative person, so that part's probably not going to be as hard. But hopefully what I've shown you in this past hour helps break down the technical aspects into something that's repeatable. So my parting thoughts would be to master the 3 categories of blending modes and become a ninja with adjustment layers to modify those photos. If it needs to be mid-tone, make it mid-tone. Because once you learn this stuff, you are in charge of the photos. And you won't believe how much it's going to improve your paintings. Now, I want to thank you so much for buying this series. It's a big deal to me. You are allowing this project of mine, which has been, I think, 6 years now in the time of recording. I never thought this would have lasted more than 6 months. So thank you for your support. It is not going unnoticed. And I can't wait to make more videos. Have fun painting.